Assalamu alaikum, guys. We are on chapter 7.5 of your material. Now, today we're dealing still with surface area. The surface area that we're dealing with today, of course, is cylinders. All right, so notice that we have the basic formula S is equal to 2b plus pH. That is the basic formula for prisms and cylinders. And of course, we still need to interpret the capital B and the capital P as well. So let's get started, guys. We are talking about cylinders. Remember that the capital B is the area of the base. And of course, we know that the base, whatever the cylinder sits on, are the circles. So therefore, that capital B, the formula that you would have to use would be area of a circle. And from previous lessons, we have learned that area of a circle is pi r squared. Now, the perimeter of the base, remember that we have to find the distance around the perimeter of the base. We have to use the term circumference of circle, or rather the formula for circumference of circle, because there's no such thing as called the perimeter of base other than if it's the circumference. So, I have a can right here that I used last night. Now, why do we need the distance around? So remember that lateral area is basically the area of the label itself, right? So how would I find how much paper would cover this can? I measure the distance around, then multiply it to the height. Now, if I unwrap it, what is it that I get? I get a rectangle, right? So how am I going to get that distance on the bottom? By finding the circumference of the circle, the distance around, or the perimeter of a circle, which is called circumference. Now, circumference of a circle, you have two choices to use. Either you use 2 pi r or you use pi d. Now, for the most part for myself, since anyways in the formula I'm going to be using radius, I usually just stick to 2 pi r. But it's your option to use pi d when you're working with lateral area, and I'll tell you what that means when we get to it. So now, to go ahead and do our formula, remember S is equal to 2b plus pH. The capital B is going to be substituted by pi r squared. The capital P by 2 pi r. That's what I mainly use, but there will be instances that you can use pi d, and that's just going to be your own personal preference. So here we go. S is equal to 2. The capital B is pi r squared. Now, you don't have to put it in parentheses, but I'm just showing you that that capital B is being substituted by pi r squared. Plus, the P is 2 pi r. And again, you don't have to substitute it in parentheses, but I'm just signifying that this whole term is replacing that P. And don't forget that you have an H. So this is the formula that we're going to be using to find lateral area and also as well to find total surface area. Sorry, guys. So let's go ahead and get started with a word problem, or actually just a regular math problem. Here we go. Now I am asking you to go ahead and determine the lateral and surface area. I want you to do it to the nearest tenth and use 3.14 for pi. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just tilt it a little bit so we can get the most that we can out of the screen, because the math itself is going to be quite a few steps. So we've got S is equal to 2b plus pH. Remember, we broke it down previously. I do have a radius. So I'm going to go ahead and use radius for this. S is equal to 2. And then remember, it's pi r squared plus my capital P is 2 pi r. And don't forget the H, okay? Substitute your values, guys, and start your math, right? S is equal to 2 pi, and then my radius is 7, which is going to be squared. Then 2 pi, my radius again is 7. And then my height of the whole cylinder is 15. So go ahead and start doing your math. Use your calculator, or for those of you that don't need a calculator, because quite a bit of the math might be very simple. S is equal to 2 pi, and then 7 squared. Remember, 7 times 7 is 49. One common mistake, kids multiply 7 and 2, which is 14, and that's incorrect. So 7 times 7 is 49, and over here 2 pi, And then use your calculator, because most of us might not be able to calculate 7 times 15, but those of us that can, we know it's 105. All right, next step. What is 49 times 2? 49 times 2 is 98. So at this point, we have 98 pi plus 105 times 2 is 210. And don't forget it's pi. At this point, remember, we're doing lateral and surface area. We can get to the end of the question and then deal with lateral area in a minute. So we can go ahead at this point, add both terms, the 98 and the 210. So this would give us S is equal to 308 pi. Notice that I'm answering in pi. Why am I doing pi, guys? Because the less that I deal with a decimal, especially when you're taking a test and you're not allowed to use a calculator, why would we want to multiply by 3.14 from the get-go when it's just going to be so difficult to track all those decimals, right? So the last step, S is equal to 308 times 3.14. And the minute you multiply and use your calculator, you should get that S is equal to 967.12. It did say to the nearest tenth. So surface area is approximately, remember that the nearest tenth, it's that 1 right there. The 2 tells us what's going to happen. Since the value is less than 5, we're not going to change it. 967.1, what are we talking about? Centimeters. Remember, we're talking about surface area, so it's centimeters squared. So here is my answer for surface area. Now, what about lateral? Lateral, remember, lateral is anything on that plus sign, to the right of the plus sign, right? So everything to the right, here it is. LA is equal to 210 pi. So just bring it to the side, guys. LA is equal to 210 pi. And then LA is equal to 210 times 3.14. And go ahead and plug that into your calculator. You should get 659.4. 659.4. And again, we're talking about surface area, centimeters squared. So it is that easy, guys, okay? Just remember, keep track of that 3.14. And use pi at the end so you don't struggle with the multiplication and making sure that you're keeping track of all the decimals. Now, let's go ahead and try another problem. Now, the instructions are going to be a little bit different. We're still using the same formula, guys. But this time, I want you to get the surface area. So I need the surface area. I'm not asking you for lateral. And I need it in pi form. So pi form. I need it nearest tenth, and of course 3.14 for pi. All right, so you're going to give me two answers. One of them is going to be in pi form, the other one is going to be to the nearest tenth. So let's say that we have a can of tomatoes. And the can of tomatoes, this time notice what they're giving you. They're giving you the diameter, and the diameter in this case is going to be 6 inches. And then the height of the can is going to be 8 inches. Okay, so again, we're going to be using the basic formula. S is equal to 2b plus pH, and go back to the breakdown. S is equal to 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. Now remember, you are given diameter in this problem, and I did say previously that for the p, you can choose 2 pi r or pi d. Now I always stick to 2 pi r. That's just my habit, but it doesn't have to be, and you don't have to stick to that. You could put here pi dh, and it's just one less step of multiplication. Now, since I need radius, regardless whether I'm using radius or the diameter on the lateral, I still need to calculate radius, like it or not. So my diameter is equal to 6. The radius is going to be 6 divided by 2, so my radius is going to be 3 inches. So this is the value that I'm going to be using as my radius, okay? So let's substitute. S is equal to 2 pi 3 squared, and then again I'm using radius, 2 pi 3, and then the height is 8. Now just do the math, guys. Do your PEMDAS, order of operations, exponents first. So I have 2 pi, remember 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. And then over here, 2 pi, 3 times 8, sorry, is 24. And then I have 2 pi times 9, so 2 times 9 is 18 pi. And then 2 times pi times 24 is 48 pi. Now remember that you can go ahead and add up both of them. So in this case, surface area, if you use your calculator, you should get 66 pi. And this is our pi form answer. Now we're talking about inches and we're talking about area. So you need to put the units. Don't forget your units. Inches squared. That's the first one. That's the pi form. Now I need it to the nearest tenth. Go ahead and plug in 3.14, right? S is equal to 66 times 3.14. And once you multiply by pi, remember it's an approximate answer. So when you multiply it, you should get 207.24. Now, if you can get the final answer and round it off from your calculator from the get-go, you can skip this step, guys. I'm okay with that. But for those of you that need help rounding, I need to show you, how do you round? That number 4 is not greater than 5, so therefore that 2 remains the same. If that number would have been 5 or higher, then you would round it up to 3. So S is approximately 207 2/10, and again, we're talking about inches squared, because it's surface area. And here are your two answers. This one is in pi form, and this one is to the nearest tenth. Okay? Now, this part of the lesson, in a real world situation, okay, I'm gonna tack on a real world situation. It's a little bit of a critical thinking skill, guys. And it's not gonna be by any means easy, but you've gotta be careful how you're reading it. Okay? So here is our real world problem. And we've got a cylindrical pool. Remember that we said the cylindrical meant cylinder? So a cylindrical pool is 9 feet deep. The distance from the center of the pool to the edge is 28 feet. How much material was needed to create the pool? They want you to answer to the nearest tenth and then use 3.14 for pi. So you've got to think critically. What is a cylindrical pool going to look like? Well, you know, I've always said, when in doubt, you draw it up, right? So let's go ahead and draw, because some of us maybe are more visual. So here we go. Let's say that that's the pool. Now, it did say that it is 9 feet deep, so we know from the top to the bottom is 9 feet. That's the height. And not only that, it told us that from the center to the edge is 28 feet. So that means they're talking about radius, right? So the radius from the center all the way to the edge, 28 feet. Now, think about it. It's asking how much material. Obviously, material would be, you know, the side walls, the base. Now, you have to be very careful. I know that I have this can, so let's imagine that this is the pool, right? So what you need to take into consideration is this would be a pool, right? Does it have a cover on it? A pool doesn't have a cover, you know, not at least, you know, a cover that's made of the same material. You could probably buy a plastic one, but you have only one base. You're not going to be using the regular formula of 2 bases, because obviously the swimming pool is open on the top, right? It doesn't have a cover. It has a cover on the bottom, material on the bottom, and then material all the way around. So it has lateral, all the distance around this, the circle on the label part, or rather cylinder part, and then also the base of the circle. So instead of using 2B, we're going to be using only 1b because the swimming pool is open on top. So let's go. So remember that S is equal to B plus pH. Again, only 1 because there's no cover on top. It's only the base on the bottom. So again, you're going to be using still the same formula, which is pi r squared. And then the perimeter, which is the distance, the circumference around, is going to be 2 pi r. And don't forget that you have to multiply by h. Now go ahead and substitute your values, guys, and do the math, right? S is equal to pi. My radius is 28. And yes, these numbers are going to be a little bit on the large side. 2 pi times 28. And then the height of the whole pool is 9 feet. So multiply it by 9. And then go ahead and plug in your numbers. 28 times 28 is 784. So this is 784 pi. Over here, 2 times 28 times 9. Now, if you want to go ahead and do it all at once, that's okay too. But step by step, 252. S is equal to 784 pi. And then 252 times 2 is 504. Especially for my 7th graders, guys, if you took standardized testing, it's best to go with pi all the way, okay? Those 8th graders, they would be able to take star with a calculator. So answering in pi form maybe for them is not as helpful, but for you all it is. Now go ahead and add the 784 and the 504, and it's going to give you 1,288 pi. And then the last step, 1,288 times 3.14, and go ahead and multiply that. You should get S is approximately, now I'm going to go ahead and round it off at 4,044.32. I'm going to leave it at 0.3. We're talking about feet. We're talking about surface area. So my final answer, S is equal to 4,044 and 3/10 feet squared. So I hope that you found this lesson easy. Remember, if you're given diameter, don't forget to go ahead and find your radius, divide it by 2. Optional, if you want to use 2 pi r or pi d here. Now, pi d would probably be optimal or much better when you're just looking for a lateral area. But if you're dealing with the whole surface area, just go ahead and use 2 pi r, just to make things easy, and you don't have to be confused about what numbers am I using. Just use the radius for the most part, and that's the reason that I do it. So inshallah you found this lesson easy, and I hope to see you in class inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, guys.